Hello everyone, it is none other than me, myself, and I, the Trinity, otherwise known as I'm out in the sun right now because I've been sitting inside all day, and I just thought I'd come outside for a second and make this quick video about the Jesus myth theory, because I hope I'm not covering up the microphone. I don't know what I'm doing. So, there's my, I don't know what you call that, a driveway that's, whatever, that ends in my yard. So, this video, I want to talk about the many verses that talk about Jesus's flesh. Now I'll make my way. Just, listen and watch the sloppy garage stuff and try to figure out what in the world is this and why does he have that. Yeah, whatever. So, get my hand off the microphone. I don't know where the microphone is on there. I think it's, now that's the, oh well, whatever. All right. Short video, I said. So, there's a lot of verses that talk about the flesh of Jesus, his flesh and blood. Certainly there are references to not just his flesh, but his blood as well. So obviously the Jesus myth deniers are going to try and say, well, look, there's at least 12 or 13 verses or whatever it is talking about Jesus' flesh. And some of them even mention blood. So doesn't that mean he was a human? How could you have flesh and blood if Jesus wasn't a human? Well, there are tiny clues sprinkled about that lead us to believe that maybe this isn't so cut and dried, as we've seen in a bunch of other videos I've done, where the surface orthodox explanation, it makes sense in the orthodox worldview if you ignore a bunch of other evidence, but if you look at everything, and if you dig, especially if you dig under the hood and look at the Greek and Hebrew if necessary, you can see that things are not as they seem. And so in this case, let's pose a question. We already know the orthodox view, right? God, a God mated with a human and gave birth to a, God or demigod. And he was human, but kind of part human. We already know that. But what if we suppose another explanation? What if we present this idea? What if the flesh these verses are talking about in the epistles is a different kind of flesh? Not human flesh, but a heavenly flesh. Flesh that is still physical, a blood that is still physical, a blood that still can be spilled. It's just not human blood. It's just not human flesh. And one of the tiny clues, the vestigial remnants, as I like to refer to them as, can be found in Corinthians, where Paul is telling us pretty much explicitly that there are different kinds of flesh. Birds have a different kind of flesh than fish. Fish have a different kind of flesh than humans. And he goes on to say there is a earthly flesh, or body, as it's translated in modern translations, and there is a heavenly or spiritual flesh. That is immensely enlightening and important to this idea of Jesus' flesh and blood. Because if Paul is telling us there was a heavenly kind of flesh, then this opens the door for our explanation that the flesh that these epistles are talking about is a heavenly flesh. It's physical, but it's made up of heavenly stuff. We're made from the ground, from the earth. Iron, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Jesus was made of heavenly stuff, whatever that stuff was. I mean, not everything was known, because these people didn't know about iron and calcium and so on. But they knew that mankind came from earth. Jesus was up in heaven, so it makes sense Jesus must have taken on flesh that was a kind of heavenly flesh, a different kind, not man, not human. This also is supported by the fact that Jesus is said to have taken on the likeness of sinful flesh. The form of humanity, the shape, form there, the Greek is morphe, meaning physical appearance. Just like a calf, a golden calf it's an effigy, it's a likeness of a calf. It looks like a calf, but it's not a calf. It's just a chunk of gold shaped in the form of a calf. Well, Jesus took on the shape of a man. He wasn't a man, he wasn't human, but he certainly looked human. He just wasn't made of the same stuff. And that's what we have going on with all these flesh and blood references. Normally, flesh and blood in a non-Jesus context means human. When you see the term flesh and blood, it's really talking about the state of humanity being trapped inside this fleshly body, which Paul believed was innately sinful, and always dragging you towards doing, sinful things. So all of the verses could be lumped under this idea that the flesh that we're talking about is different. Not that he didn't have flesh, but that it was simply not human flesh. He took on the form of humanity. He took on the shape, the likeness, the appearance of humanity, which means necessarily that he wasn't human, because nobody would ever talk in those terms if they really believed he was born and lived a life as a human being. So the only thing left to really look at is the ones in the, I think it's 1 John, where he's talking about, if you don't believe Jesus came in the flesh, then you're not a real believer. You could possibly write those off as an anti-docetic kind of attack on the docetic people, which in that case you would have to relinquish that epistle to the orthodox side along with the Gospels and Acts. So we could debate that one. But the other ones don't have that flavor. So all of the other ones could be explained simply by showing that at least Paul believed that there were different kinds of flesh, and that Jesus had a spiritual or heavenly flesh. And spiritual flesh isn't an oxymoron. It's spiritual in the sense that Paul believed what spiritual meant, and that meant heavenly. Not some, non-physical, non-corporeal, but a certain kind of flesh that was made of heavenly stuff, whatever that stuff was. So, anyway, I didn't want to do like a proper video because it's really just, I'm just not in the mood to, and I want to just sort of lump all those flesh verses into one explanation. It's just simply not human flesh. It's pretty clear in Corinthians, I think it's chapter 15, where Paul is telling us this. I mean, nearly explicitly, that Jesus was made of heavenly stuff. We look in Hebrews and can see that the author of Hebrews believed Jesus was never on earth. He almost states it explicitly. It's the smoking gun where he says, if Jesus was on earth, he wouldn't be a high priest. And he says Jesus was offered in the heavenly tabernacle, not made of human hands. And the author of Hebrews maintains this duality because that's what they believe. Earth was below, heaven was above. Earth was imperfect, heaven was perfect. Earth was temporal, heaven was eternal. Earth was sinful, heaven was not, etc., etc. Whatever earth was, heaven was not. Heaven was better. Earth was the copy, heaven was the original. And so we had the high priests on earth offering sacrifices yearly and offering animal blood. So we have to invert that and make a duality out of it. So now we have Jesus, our high priest in heaven. So you see, he can't be on earth because then that would mess up the duality, right? So you have Jesus, the high priests on earth. Well, then you have Jesus in heaven. So you have many high priests on earth and only one Jesus in heaven. You see how it works? It's a parallel duality. It's a contrasting parallel. The high priest offered other people's or other animals' blood as atonement. Jesus offered his own blood, which was better. That was a better sacrifice. Offering your own blood, right? I mean, I'll even agree with that. That's a more powerful sacrifice than offering someone else's blood or the blood of a goat. And the high priests offered their blood, the blood they offered often, over and over and over. Jesus offered his once. So the duality is maintained. You couldn't have a Jesus on earth, or it would completely destroy the dualism that the author of Hebrews so meticulously kept, because that's exactly what he believed. And so these vestigial remnants of the earlier belief are at least plentiful enough to illuminate what we're trying to get at. What did these people really believe? Well, they're telling us. We just have to get past these modern translations which cloud it like a pane of glass that hasn't been cleaned with Windex in about 60 years. You're looking through it and you go, I can't see. You wipe it off and go, whoa, I had no idea. So anyway, the flesh of Jesus was a heavenly flesh because that's where they believed Jesus was, with God. So all those verses are explained with that one basic idea. Well, it looks like I'm approaching my YouTube imposed limit since I'm a bad person and I'm uploading copyrighted material. So now my video time limit is 15 minutes. So I've got one more minute left. I guess I'll use that 60 seconds to say, fuck you, YouTube. Fuck you, WMG. Fuck you, UMG. Fuck you, SMG. And all record companies that want to police every single website and everything on the earth because you're so greedy that you just can't understand that, hey, the world's a big open place and too bad, motherfucker, because whatever. So I guess that was a good 30 seconds I used. Shoo, I got about 25 more seconds. Who else can I say fuck you to? I don't know. I'll leave it at that for today. I'll leave it at that because I got only 13 seconds left. So anyway, I hope that explains it. Flesh isn't always human flesh. Ciao.